this is your Captain Panic speaking, and welcome back to another Touchdesigner tutorial. So, Happy New Year at this point. It's a little bit late, but it's my first tutorial for 2024. So just wanted to say it. And yeah, this tutorial will be a little bit more simple than my last tutorials, and you won't have to listen to me for over an hour this time, I promise. Yeah, and I want to balance those long tutorials with some more simple ones. So this one, which you can already see in the background, is a little bit more simple, and it's inspired by this 4 images of some effects I always liked, which is this sort of scan glitch effect, where it just scans down the pixels. And I also always enjoy some nice sliced up images, just like those two. I mean, this is a little bit different. It blends over 2 images by slices, but still it inspired me for this. And also this abstract painting, where it's, I don't know, with a rake, then the color gets pushed down or something like this. And I really like this look. So I wanted to create something similar in Touchdesigner, which is animated, has a simple workflow, and gives us a cool effect which we can apply in many different ways, which I will just show. So in this example, we have the scan glitch effect going downwards, and we could also make it a little bit more sliced up and circular. I really enjoy this. It's a little bit spiky, really cool. And also, of course, we can do it sideways, and of course this is very easy to adapt. So if you want more slices, you can play around here. You want them to be a little bit more defined, more harmonics, whatever. So this gives us some really nice ways to play around. And of course, we could also have it more organic and natural and not that geometric. We could also use everything a little bit more abstract as a displays. Maybe that's not the best to do with a portrait image, because that quickly gets creepy. So you could also use some flowers, of course. Abstract them a little bit or not, just slice them up. Yeah, so just as you can see, it gives us a lot of opportunities to play around. It's a very simple setup, and before I chew your ears off, we can get started quickly. But before that, I just want to say that the project files for this, as always, can be found on my Patreon, but I also have the opportunity to sign up for my YouTube account directly now. So you can become a member of my channel, I think, and I set up a cool Google Drive with all of my tutorial project files. And if you sign up for my YouTube channel, you can get them directly on YouTube if you don't like Patreon. The Patreon stays the same. I just wanted to give more opportunities to you to decide on. Yep. And now enough of that self-advertisement, and let's get started, and I will see you on my screen. All right, welcome on my screen. And let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is bring in the image, or if you want to video, you want to displace. So in my case, I am going with that flower for now. In this tutorial, you don't have to worry about anything in the image, I think. Just load in whatever you like to displace. So in my case, I have this rendering of a flower. It has a background, could also be transparent. You can choose whatever you'd like, not unlike my other tutorials where it's very specific how the image input has to look like. Okay, so next step is that we want to set a resolution we want to use. Of course, you could also use the native resolution of your image. But I think it's more easy to adapt to all the different ratios there are if you have a fit. And in my case, I will go with 2K square resolution now. And I set it to fit outside, so it scales it up to the ratio. Then I want to be able to see what we are doing in the background. So I make a null, which I then display in the background by hitting this blue button here. Okay, so the next step we want to do is set up our slices, like where our image gets displaced. And to do that, I will use a noise, and we make this fit the first input of our noise, and then in the output we change this to noise. And by doing that, we just set the resolution of this noise to be the same as this fit, but don't have the image in it. And another thing we want to do in this fit here, we want to set it to 32-bit float. And doing that gives us basically more color information and pixel information to play with and makes everything more detailed. This affects the performance quite heavily sometimes. So if your frame rate drops, you can set this to 16-bit float or 8-bit as well. But the more details you want, the higher the pixel format should be. I think for this setup, which is really quite simple, it shouldn't matter which pixel format you're using. But I just wanted to mention it. Okay, let's continue. Let's head back into that noise. And now in the transform, we set this scale to 0 and this scale to 10. So we get this kind of look, I guess. And then you could just play around with the period here, maybe set something like period 4, harmonics 0, but it doesn't really matter at this point. You can always play around with those numbers. The only thing I would do now is set down the exponent to 0. So we have this black and white only image. You can also adjust this later, but for now, let's set this to 0. And then after this, we make a threshold. So we only get our white areas and have this black areas transparent. And you can leave this on the default values. And now we want to get our color information inside of those slices. And to do that, we combine this threshold with our image by doing a composite. And then just bring this in. You can keep this on multiply. And yeah, basically these are our slices, which will be then moved downwards to get the scan effect I've shown before. So let's give us some more space here. And after this, I make a null because this is our first step. And now we head into our second step, which is the feedback loop. And I always like to group those because it makes it easier to adjust and put things in between later. Okay, so let's move this over. And now after this insert operator, I make a comp. And then out of that null, I also make a feedback, which I will then connect to a transform. And then back into the comp. In that comp, we set the operation mode to over. And then, yeah, that should be fine. So make sure the null is above the transform. That's quite important for this effect. And then inside of the transform, now we want to push down our pixels. And to do that, on the y-axis, which is the second translate input here, we set this to minus 0.001. And then when we hit play, nothing happens because we first need to make this comp the target layer of our feedback. So take this, push it on here, let go. And now you can see our effect is happening. Cool. What do we need to do now? Because we don't want this transparent areas here. So we want to bring in our source image behind this in the end. So let's make a select. And now let's use this fit, drag it on the select. By doing that, it just gets selected and takes it as a reference, and it makes it easier to organize our network without having a lot of nodes. And then I will just make an over and put this one over this one. So second input base image, first input displaced image. Cool. So now we want to be able to reset our feedback loop. So we bring in a keyboard in chop here. Let's make this one active, push it over here, and set it by chop reference on the puts. And whenever you hit 1, it just starts again. Okay. So now let's head back into this noise. So if you change the seed, of course, you get a different pattern of slices. If you make more harmonics, you get more diverse slices, I guess. And if you turn down this one, you get more same-sized slices. But I'm not sure if this is the correct explanation of this. But yeah, but we want to animate it because like this, it's just still and maybe a little bit boring. So let's animate it. by heading into the Transform tab in the Noise section. And then just type in abs time dot seconds, and I will multiply it with 0.05. By doing that, we get some cool animation. Okay, cool. So now we want to have a look at how to do this effect, not down or up, but sideways. To do that, we will just copy that noise, just so we keep this version as well as the other one. So we can just connect this here, and then instead of having it 0, 10 here, we change this to 10 and 0 on the axis. By doing that, we get vertical slices. And then we also need to change, because right now, it's also quite a cool effect, but not what we want. In this transform, where we are pushing it down, which we also copy, so we keep both. Can make this inactive right now, and also this one. But the same thing as we did with changing the scale from the X to the Y, we need to change the translate here. So turn this to 0, and this one to maybe 0.001. By doing that, we push our slices right and or left. Same as before, you can adjust this very, very easily. Okay, so the next step I have shown in the beginning is the one where it gets a little bit more spiky and has this kind of circular movement. Is by just, let's copy this so we have all our different effects in the same setup. And the simple trick for getting it circular and more spiky is just adding some rotation. So in my case, I went with something like 0.25. And by doing that, we get a simple rotation in our movement. And maybe you can even go lower with this to make it less visible. Yeah, maybe a little bit more. Whatever you like, actually. And also maybe go down with the period here. And also, of course, you can set this if you want the displacement to happen a little bit faster. You can just turn this up. And also, maybe let's add some movement on the y-axis. Yeah, maybe not. Now I'm getting to playful and experimenting around with this, but I won't do that in the tutorial now. But you should definitely play around with everything in this transform tab. You could also scale up, or I don't know, whatever you want to do, do it. So it's every parameter does some quite interesting things here. This is also quite cool to play with the scale, but not for me at this moment. And another thing I want to show is using this as a displacement map. It's very, very simple. So just instead of copying those two over each other, we can use our base image, make a displace, and use this one as the second input. And then maybe turn down the displace weight to something like 0.1. And maybe change this to mirror. Maybe change the offset weight to something like this, maybe. And this way it gets even more abstract and nice. Of course, you could use different images, just plug them in and have fun, I would say. So here are the different effects again, changed the noise types. If you want it to be a little bit more organic and not that geometric slices, you could bring up the scale here again and have this noise a little bit more organic. And also maybe bring up the exponent again, just a little bit. Turn up the harmonics. So this way it gets more analog glitch wipe kind of look, and it's a little bit grungy, but yeah, you do you. You find something you like and you do it. And yes, that's it for the tutorial. Just as I said, this one is very simple, but still very, very cool. And I hope you enjoyed this little trip, little adventure, and hope you had a good start into the new year. Thanks for the continued support. I am very proud you are here, and stay kind, stay creative, and we will hear each other, or you might hear me. I won't hear you, but I'm very happy about messages I get. So whatever, have a good time. Until next time, bye bye.